please welcome Juan Maroney Omatad.
Good afternoon. As you've heard, I'm Juan Maroney Omatad. I am a Grantmakers in Health board member and chair of the 2024 Terrance Keenan Awards Committee. Thank you for joining us today during this time dedicated to honoring two amazing individuals whose dedicated leadership is to present the honoree for the 2024 Terrance Keenan Leadership Award in Health Philanthropy, which honors outstanding individuals in this field whose work is distinguished by leadership, innovation, achievement, creativity, and boldness. This award is named after Terrance Keenan, honoring his more than 40 years of service and contributions to the field of philanthropy, where he exemplified, taught, and charged us to invest in leadership and develop new institutions and systems to confront major needs. Terrance Keenan challenged grantmakers to make their self-concept as public trusts the overriding article of their faith and the guiding force of their behavior. And he encouraged us to embrace both the freedom to fail and the freedom to persist. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the members of this year's selection committee for their time and commitment to this process. Melinda Abrams, Rachel Baird, Patty Baum, Joanne Burkholz, Robert Gibson, Rose Green, Anne-Marie Healy, and Barbara Leonard. Thank you all so very much. Our 2024 award recipient is Billie Hall, the founding and newly retired president and chief executive officer of the Sunflower Foundation in Kansas. And yes, we can give Billie a round of applause. There is so much that can and should be said about Billie Hall. She has had such an accomplished career in public health and philanthropy, and she truly embodies the spirit of the Terrance Keenan Award. Fortunately, you will have an opportunity to hear some golden nuggets directly from Billie shortly. However, for the next few minutes, I want to share with you a bit about this giant of a lady and leader. Billie is a fifth-generation Kansan who has spent her career using her talents and experience working to make life better for all Kansans. But her influence and impact have also reached across the field of philanthropy, including serving on the Greater Topeka Partnership Board of Directors and as past chair of the Board of Directors for Grantmakers in Health. As a young person, Billie knew she wanted to be a psychologist. But after college, someone told her about public health, and that directed her onto the path where she has been able to answer her calling and walk out her purpose. And that she has indeed. Billie started her career in public health on the front line, serving as a public health educator, where she often worked with youth and migrant populations. She has since served as the founding leader for several organizations, where she has used her platform and created space to amplify the voices of typically disenfranchised populations and communities. Billie's career has spanned public health, hospital leadership, and healthcare research, policy, and advocacy, all of which led her to the Sunflower Foundation. Established as a state health-wide philanthropy in 2000 as part of a $75 million settlement between Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas and the state of Kansas, the Sunflower Foundation's mission is to serve as a catalyst to improve the health of all Kansans. Billie's nominators explain, understanding both the need for long-term investment in systems change and the importance of meeting people where they are, Billie created a formula 22 years ago that we today call trust-based philanthropy, which is to support nonprofits and communities in ways that are convenient for them, investing in catalytic concepts that allow these partners the time, space, and flexibility to produce the positive change they desire. Billie's legacy is one of pioneering change, visionary risk, disruptive innovation, and meaningful influence, all driven by an unwavering commitment to her calling and her community. Although Billie has retired from the Sunflower Foundation, I am excited to see what she will do in her next season to continue to challenge all of us to leverage the power of philanthropy to advance and achieve health equity. Please join me in saluting the 31st recipient of the Terrance Keenan Leadership Award, Billie Hall.
Heart's still going here, just a second. Give me a minute here. Okay. Okay. Oh, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Juan, for everything you did, and getting to know you has been very special to me. I also want to thank and acknowledge GIH. I am honored and humbled to receive this award. My first GIH annual meeting was in 2002 in New York City, shortly after 9/11. The Terrance Keenan Award that year was given to Tom David, a colleague who became a mentor and dear friend. I have missed attending the annual meeting for several years, and it feels good today to be here with colleagues and friends in health philanthropy. As you heard from Juan, my formal training is in public health, and as she said, experience in the field included education, hospital systems, women's health, and health policy. And while my experience proved useful as I took on the work at Sunflower, I quickly learned that philanthropy is its own field. It is my honor to share a few reflections of my health philanthropy journey, a journey that began in 2001 when I was called to interview for the CEO position of a new foundation. At that time, I was the Vice President of Policy for the Kansas Health Institute. I was covering the news about this new foundation that was created through a settlement agreement with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas in anticipation of its change to becoming a for-profit, which did not happen in Kansas. I called the insurance commissioner at that time, and now former Secretary of HHS, Kathleen Sebelius, to ask for her advice about considering this position. In short order, I was interviewed and offered the job on the same day as the inaugural CEO. This afternoon, I want to share 6 pieces of insight and advice with you. First and foremost, know your foundation's origin and history. When I started, Sunflower had no staff, no office, no budget, not even a bank account. My first day as CEO was literally at my dining room table. One of my first acts was to reach out to GIH, the beginning of what would become a long, vital relationship, a relationship that guided the development of the Sunflower Foundation. I also credit GIH for my growth as a CEO. GIH introduced me to the world of philanthropic leaders, educators, and consultants. Many of these people have become colleagues. In addition to my GIH team, my peers, many of whom are sitting in front of me today, have enriched my leadership journey. For that opportunity to connect and share, I offer my sincere thanks to each of you. My second point of advice is that you should intentionally build a leadership circle. I learned that it is critical as a CEO to build a personal leadership circle. This is a group of colleagues and advisors who will take your call, think through problems, and share ideas for solutions. Look for individuals that challenge you, that offer a different perspective, and people who understand your mission. Third, always remember, mission matters. I don't think anyone in this room would disagree with mission matters. The Sunflower Foundation is very small, with less than $100 million to serve the entire state of Kansas. We are a flyover, or often driven through state, on your way to the east or the west. Our state covers 82,000 square miles, 105 counties, and 4 sovereign nations. The inaugural board knew the enormous challenge that they were facing as the settlement agreement charged the foundation to improve the health of all Kansans. Early on, they changed the original mission from improving the health of all Kansans to serving as a catalyst to improve the health and well-being of all Kansans. Those few words made all the difference and defined the way the Sunflower Foundation still does its work, with catalyst being the most important value. The fourth thing I want to share is that we each need to think deeply about what diversity means. As the foundation grew as a health philanthropy, so did our understanding of diversity. I think we again would all agree that meeting the needs of our target populations is central to achieving our missions. However, what diversity means in that context is key. I believe we must remain humble and accept that a one-size-fits-all answer to diversity is unlikely to be effective. What matters most is matching our resources and strategies to the specific challenges of the populations we serve. Next, I want to share a few tips for successful health philanthropy. Early on, I recognized the power of convening. Simply bringing the right people together was a powerful leadership strategy. And often these were leaders from different sectors who had never met one another. By convening, we encouraged open dialogue and collaboration. I listened and learned in ways that catalyzed the foundation's work. Convening led us to be responsive to important areas and systems that impacted the health of Kansans. Sunflower's programmatic achievements include capacity building or core operating grants, which began in 2005 and continue today, food security and food as medicine, integrated care, community trails, and advocacy, which gave us a way to influence health policy. We put a very high priority on working to change systems that would be transformative, and durable. Each of Sunflower's program's areas benefited from convening and from learning from many of you. For example, for almost 2 years, we spent traveling and learning about how to become part of the integration of care and behavioral health. Our model was informed by our colleagues in Maine, Tennessee, and Colorado. I want to thank you for your advice that included both must-haves and whatever you do, don't do that. Good advice. When working with nonprofit organizations, we decided early on that to effectively impact health policy, we needed them to be skilled in advocacy. The more we provided opportunities to learn about advocacy, the more we noticed their increasing effectiveness at the community, state, and national levels. Also, as we convene nonprofits to offer advocacy training, an unintended consequence was their extensive network, which continues today. Finally, I want to end with the importance of vision. I have spent time today sharing the importance of convening. It was always my vision to offer a space where people could come together to connect, learn, and share. The culmination of my vision was realized with the opening about 2 years ago of a newly renovated century-old powerhouse on the historic Menninger Hill in Topeka. This space serves to honor not only the Menninger legacy in mental health, it also gives nonprofits a space to develop their own catalytic potential. We didn't know we were going to find a powerhouse, but it fit perfectly with the word catalyst. Without vision, we could not have gone from the settlement agreement piece of paper to an inspirational space used by Kansans and others on this historic hill. I would like to end with some wise advice from Terrance Keenan. He encouraged foundations to embrace both the freedom to fail and the freedom to persist. I have benefited from both experiences, and I hope you keep this vision, this wisdom in your heart as you work to improve the health of people, communities, and our country. Thank you once again for this tremendous honor.
Please welcome to the stage Irfan Hassan.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and congratulations, Billie. Many of us in this room have a job which is often about making a choice. Which nonprofit to fund, how much, how long. Yet it was daunting to chair this year's award selection committee. The stakes felt higher given the importance of advocacy and the many highly qualified nominees. In fact, truth be told, I was worried I'd go down in GIH history as the committee chair who had to resort to a group game of rock, papers, and scissors to pick an awardee. We didn't, but the committee, which right here, were just wonderful to work with, and I really thank all of them for making my life easier. And thank you to Ann Rogers as well at GIH for helping us get through the process. So a bit more about the award and this year's recipient. The Andy Hyman Award for Advocacy recognizes a nonprofit champion who embodies a commitment to principled action, leadership to advance societal change, and dedication to making progress in policy and practice despite challenging political environments. Andy, who worked at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and as I have come to learn from those who knew Andy personally and professionally, was a smart, passionate, and innovative grant maker with a deep commitment to GIH. Andy's passion at the foundation was to secure meaningful access to health coverage. The synergy of the award's vision with the accomplishments of this year's recipient is remarkable, and it is a great pleasure to present Joan Alker with the Grant Makers in Health 2024 Andy Hyman Award for Advocacy. Joan co-founded the Georgetown University Center for Children and Families, or CCF, almost 20 years ago, and has served as its executive director since 2009. Her commitment to ensure health insurance coverage for all goes back even further when she led critical advocacy efforts while at the National Coalition for the Homeless and Families USA. And it is Joan's tenacity as an advocate that has made CCF a nationally recognized expert on Medicaid and CHIP. Joan has testified before Congress, served on expert advisory panels at the federal government, is a frequent speaker, and is routinely quoted in major national and state media outlets. In fact, if one looks at any major Medicaid policy action in the past 3 decades, Joan's subtle but strong advocacy can be found in the mix, be it stopping the challenges to CHIP reauthorization in 2008, slowing opposition to the Affordable Care Act's Medicaid expansion that began in 2014, or defanging congressional efforts to cap the Medicaid program in 2017. Parallel to these efforts, Joan has systemically built CCF's technical assistance capacity to work with advocates in multiple states, blue, red, purple, and any color in between. A recent example of Joan's finely calibrated leadership is her success in protecting millions of eligible people at the risk of losing Medicaid once the pandemic-era protections ended. She helped identify and fix glitches in state automated renewal systems that could have caused millions to lose coverage for procedural reasons. In fact, those of us who were in Monday's Medicaid Unwound What Comes Next pre-conference session, I shudder to think how much worse the conversation could have been had it not been for Joan's hard work to ensure millions continued to retain Medicaid. So please join me in welcoming and congratulating the recipient of the Grant Makers in Health 2024 Andy Hyman Award for Advocacy, Joan Alker.
Thank you so much for this amazing honor, and also Irfan for that gracious introduction, and to the selection committee. I know that you had many other nominees that could be up here right now. I want to especially thank my funders who nominated me, Katie Beckman of the Dave and Lucille Packard Foundation, and Martha Davis of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. They've shown such incredible dedication to our collective work at the Center for Children and Families, as well as to me personally, and I know you have my back. And I'll stop there because I'm going to cry. I'm not even to the Andy part yet, which is going to make me really cry. In accepting this award, I also want to acknowledge our amazing CCF team, who are really the story behind my story, a couple of whom are here today, Kelly Whitener and Kathy Hope. Woohoo! And our equally amazing state partners around the country, whom we work with every day and brings joy to our work. Michelle Johnson is here from Tennessee Center for Justice. So this award really reflects the collective efforts of an incredibly talented and dedicated staff, as well as our partnerships with an amazing set of state advocates around the country. And together, the whole is truly stronger than the sum of its parts. I'd also like to thank Grantmakers in Health for elevating the Andy Hyman Award and offering this chance to reflect on my journey through health advocacy. I'm especially honored to receive this award as I had the privilege of knowing Andy, though I didn't get to spend as much time with him as I would have liked to. When I think of Andy, I think of three things: his fierce and unwavering dedication to the cause of health justice, his love for his family, and his beautiful smile. I think about the enormous weight and severity of the mental health burden that he lived with. So as we move forward together in these challenging times, let us hold Andy's spirit in our vision, which aligns so perfectly with your conference theme, bold results through courageous action. Okay, at Georgetown CCF, our mission is to ensure that all children and their families and their caregivers, and really everybody, has access to high quality, affordable health care. We have two foundational principles that I believe have really stood the test of time, and I think will continue to do so as you think about health advocacy. These two principles are, number one, knowledge and expertise. And by that, yes, I mean data. We like data at CCF. We, of course, have a lot of expertise on really complicated state and federal health policy issues, but a concept of knowledge that is humble and accommodates and welcomes many forms of knowledge. Knowledge that is acquired through lived experience, knowledge that is acquired through lived experience of poverty, race, gender, regional differences. And our second key principle is partnership. And by that, I mean partnership that respects the voices of your partners deeply. These principles serve us very well at CCF. So to see our work in action, I am excited to share with you a short video about the work of CCF that I had nothing to do with, but thanks to Kathy and others, and our wonderful state network in the past year on Medicaid unwinding, which is a good example of how we do our work and the importance of Medicaid, which is a subject I'm very, very passionate about. As my daughters who are here can attest to, they had to hear a lot about Medicaid when they were growing up. Simply, we will not be able to make any progress on so many of our shared goals, including reducing health inequities, reducing maternal mortality and morbidity, helping children grow and thrive. Half the children in the country are insured by Medicaid. Addressing behavioral and substance use disorder crises that we face as a country, and most importantly, envisioning a day when no one in the United States goes without health insurance, unless we dedicate ourselves to protecting and strengthening Medicaid. So we're going to show the video, and then, unfortunately for you, I'm going to talk some more after it. So let's cue the video.
More than half of America's children are covered by Medicaid, and it plays an especially important role for families of color and people living in rural areas. Medicaid is essential for advancing health equity and access to affordable, high-quality care. Funded and managed by state and federal policymakers, Medicaid requires strategic advocacy at both levels of government to ensure it's able to fulfill its promise. Nearly 20 years ago, Joan Alker co-founded the Georgetown University Center for Children and Families and the Finish Line Network with the mission: all children and families should have the health care they need to succeed. The Georgetown CCF network connects national and state health policy efforts, allowing researchers and advocates to collaborate and develop effective strategies. The Finish Line Network now spans 24 states, influencing policy far beyond its borders. When eligible people started losing Medicaid coverage after pandemic protections were lifted and states resumed renewals, Georgetown CCF and its state network responded swiftly, uncovering major problems and advancing solutions.
A recent report from Georgetown University says the state of Georgia dropped about 300,000 children from its Medicaid and Peach Care programs last year.
The end of a Trump-era pause on Medicaid renewals led states to start unenrolling Medicaid recipients, and Texas kicked off more children than any other state.
Hundreds of thousands of Americans are finding out they may be without all-important Medicaid coverage.
It's a process they're calling Medicaid unwinding.
We have people that we have served for 15 to 20 years, and suddenly they're dropped off Medicaid.
It's true. People have been getting kicked off Medicaid, and sometimes with no notice. In the last year, net enrollment has dropped by over 11 million individuals, including nearly 5 million children.
Most of the families that are affected by this issue are low-income families and families of color.
When children do not have access to health care, it affects the entire community. It affects them in the fact that they're not being cared for and can have more complications. It affects their parents, because now their parents have to miss work, which means losing income.
We know that the vast majority of children who may lose coverage during this process will remain eligible for Medicaid.
I really appreciate Medicaid. It takes a large burden off of me, takes some weight off my shoulders when it comes to making sure that my child is getting proper health care.
I felt like a bad mom, she'll get less care because she doesn't have insurance, and that's the truth. I'm so grateful for Medicaid.
Georgetown CCF and the Finish Line Network are hard at work restoring health coverage to those who lost it during the unwinding and pushing state and federal leaders to fix the system and cut red tape to make it easier for families to keep their health coverage in the future.
So as you can see, this video underscores the power of connected networks working towards the same goal and reinforcing the same messages. This coordinated effort prevented policymakers from sweeping these coverage losses under the rug and is holding them accountable for the choices that they make that affect children and families in the short and long term. Healthcare is dominated by powerful economic and political interests, and the voices and needs of people and families are often left out of what can be an exclusionary discourse. This is why I urge you to fund health advocacy work. Advocacy offers you the opportunity to have a multiplier effect and get a great return investment on the work that you do, to reverse powerful patterns of economic, racial, and gender inequalities so pervasive in the United States and in our healthcare system. Advocacy is an essential component of funding for meaningful systemic change in a country with a unique health system among its peer nations. So now I'm going to share a few reflections of what I've learned about advocacy and making meaningful change. And as I thought about what to say today, an early teacher in my career kept coming to mind. As a child, I was fortunate to live and travel around the world frequently, thanks to my parents, who were international relations scholars, who were deeply dedicated to a vision of a more peaceful world. Their lives were rooted in the ashes of World War II, and their faith as practicing Quakers was very important to them. Indeed, I almost ended up spending my life in Europe, but when my sister almost died of meningitis, I knew I had to come home and stay here. So I got my first real job at the National Coalition for the Homeless, where I worked for 5 years. This began an incredible education and journey of a different kind for me, a firsthand look at the deeply entrenched systems of injustice in the United States, the importance of having more nimble, responsive, and strong government systems of social supports, as well as an enormous appreciation for the beauty of this country and the incredible diversity and strength of its people, those who were born here, and the strength and the bravery of people who choose, often at great peril on their way, to come live here. While working at NCH, I witnessed the hostility that people living on the streets often engendered, the neglect of our systems of government, and the distancing that happened all too often with people on the streets. I was formulating my thoughts about successful advocacy and searching for ways to break through and provoke action. I decided to write a report about homeless veterans, which I called Heroes Today, Homeless Tomorrow. At the time, it was not well known that as many as 1/3 of men who are homeless are veterans. This report engendered a lot of attention, including an expose in 60 Minutes, and eventually helped to secure the passage of the first comprehensive piece of legislation providing resources and supports to homeless veterans. Looking back at this now, I'm really kind of embarrassed that I felt like I had the expertise to wade into a very loaded topic that I knew very little about. I can assure you there were plenty of people who were not happy about this, many who were not shy about telling me that I didn't know what I was talking about. But I'm glad I had the zeal and a little bit of the naivete of youth to have the opportunity to wade into this, because I learned some incredible lessons from that experience that I've brought with me. One of the most important lessons that I learned was from an important teacher to me, a man named Stanley Jordan. Stanley was a black man in his 40s, and he was a Vietnam veteran who was living in his truck in Washington, D.C. when I met him. His life was profoundly shaped by multiple government decisions. Stanley had been drafted and served as a combat medic in Vietnam when he was 18 years old. He had soldiers die in his arms on the battlefield as he said he would put his hands inside their chest and massage their heart. When I met him, approximately 20 years later, he'd been recently working, ironically, in the furniture department of the US Senate. One night outside his apartment in DC, a woman was shot in the face. He went out to help her and she died in his arms. This triggered post-traumatic stress disorder for Stanley. His blood pressure shot up. He started having nightmares and anxiety. He lost his job. And the VA denied his claims for benefits because in their view, his disabilities were not service-connected. Things spiraled downward and he ended up living in his truck. Stanley taught me all too well what happens when government policies change too slowly. He taught me that red tape has very harmful consequences, a lesson I've seen play out time and time again in the years since. Stanley and I were an improbable pair. I was a young woman in my late 20s, a lapsed Quaker, and he was an older black man whose life was profoundly shaped by violence and war. But we did many things together. We testified as a team in front of the US Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. We attended press conferences, events. I took him to a movie premiere about a movie coming out about veterans with Kiefer Sutherland and Ray Liotta, some names from the past. And we just hung out in my office quite a lot. Of course, Stanley's story was incredibly compelling. It was impossible not to be moved by it. But what stayed with me as we worked together was not only how moving the story was, but how adept Stanley was at reducing distance between the speaker and the audience. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Often Stanley would do that in the small talk before the hearing or the press conference. He would reduce distance with the very people that we needed to convince. Being in Vietnam and serving in the military had been the defining experience of Stanley's life. And that was true for many of the people we met who are now decision makers. Despite having so much to be angry about, Stanley would build bridges wherever we went. He reduced distance, and he was a master at that. Reducing distance is key in how we think about successful advocacy, particularly at this moment in our nation's history, and we think about the future of our democracy. Today, more than ever, state and federal policy choices, as well as judicial decisions, are driving the conditions that the families you care about live in. Social distance is growing. In conclusion, philanthropy, like most sectors, faces many challenges in this moment, stark moment of change, with our nation rife with division. In a new age of disinformation, we must ground ourselves in facts along with the wisdom of lived experience. We must work with and strive to be compelling and trusted messengers. We must make new friends, but keep the old, sustaining networks that are grounded in their communities and can play the long game as well as the short one. We must seek ways to reduce distance from each other and stand together against bullies, untruth, and unkindness. We must inform and shape the health policy discourse so that it reflects the needs of people and families. We must imbue the discussion with humanity because government decisions matter profoundly to the lives of our nation's families and people. In doing so, I believe our work can help to restore faith in government institutions and reduce social distance. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage, Kate Trainer.
Kate Trainer, Senior Program Director here at Grantmakers in Health. Congratulations, Billie and Joan. So, I hope you found yesterday's site visits, quick takes, and learning labs engaging, and that you were able to connect with your colleagues over shared interests and priorities at our opening reception. This is one of GIH's largest conferences ever. The enthusiasm and energy here is incredible, so thank you for that. But this also means that that one